Imagine giving someone every reason to stay. Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but consistently, quietly in the ways that matter. Now imagine finding out that wasn't enough. That while you were being consistent, someone else was getting the parts of her you thought were only yours. That's where this story begins. This is the story of Dylan Price and his wife, Kayla Monroe. Dylan submitted this on a Tuesday evening. No dramatic lead-up, no long explanation. Just a message that said, "I need to tell someone who won't look at me differently after." According to him, it started at a concert on September 14th. Kayla came home late, smelled like crowds and alcohol, and told him something he almost believed. "I got a little drunk," she said. "I danced too close to some guy. It didn't mean anything." Dylan told us he nodded, that he said okay, that somewhere in his chest he felt something shift, but he chose to leave it alone. This is how it happened. I'll try to explain it the way I remember. The apartment we shared was on the 4th floor of a building that had a broken elevator 3 out of every 5 weeks. I used to joke about it. Kayla never found it funny after the first time. That probably should have told me something. We had been married 2 years and 8 months when September came. Not long enough to be comfortable in the bad way. Long enough to have stopped noticing the small things. The way she'd go quiet after certain conversations. The way I'd fill the silence without being asked to. We had a rhythm. Work, dinner, an hour of whatever show she wanted, sleep. Repeat. Sundays were ours, or they used to be. By that point, Sundays had become the day she made plans with friends, and I made plans with whatever task I'd been putting off all week. I didn't think of it as distance. I thought of it as two people who had lives. Kayla worked in marketing. She was good at it, genuinely good. Not in the way people say if it when they mean someone is fine at their job. She understood people, how they thought, what they wanted to hear. She had a way of making everyone in the room feel like they were the most interesting person there. I used to love that about her. Later, I would think about it differently. I worked in logistics management. Less glamorous. I spent my days moving things from one place to another on a screen. It paid well. It didn't make for interesting dinner conversation, and I knew that. I stopped trying to explain my days sometime around month 4 of the marriage. She never asked me to stop. She just stopped asking follow-up questions. I want to be fair here. I wasn't perfect either. I had a habit of going cold when I felt criticized. Not mean, just unavailable. I'd become polite in a way that felt like a closed door. Kayla told me once that talking to me when I was like that felt like talking to a customer service representative. I laughed it off. I've thought about that line more times than I should have. Her friends were loud and fun and always somewhere. Concerts, rooftop bars, pop-up events. Kayla had always been part of that world, and when we got together, I had stepped into it with her. But somewhere between the first year and the second, I started attending less. Not because I didn't want to, because I was tired, and she never pushed, and it became normal for her to go alone. The concert in September was one of those. A band I vaguely knew, a venue downtown. Her friend Priya had the tickets, and there were going to be 8 or 10 of them in a group. I was invited. I declined because I had an early call the next morning, and didn't feel like drinking on a weeknight. She kissed me on the cheek before she left. She smelled like perfume I'd bought her for her birthday. I watched a documentary, went to bed at 10, set my alarm for 6. I woke up at 2 in the morning when she came in. I wasn't alarmed. Not at first. She was always careful coming in late. She'd take off her shoes at the door, move quietly through the hall. But that night there was a pause before she came into the bedroom. Long enough that I opened my eyes. She was standing in the doorway, still dressed, bag over her shoulder, and the look on her face, not guilty exactly, more like someone calculating. "Hey," she said. "Sorry, didn't mean to wake you." "It's fine," I said. "How was it?" She set her bag down, sat on the edge of the bed. "It was good," she said. "I might have had too much to drink." "That's okay." She was quiet for a second. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to not make it a big thing." I sat up. She told me she'd gotten drunk and danced too close to some guy. A friend of a friend. She said it wasn't anything. She said she pulled away. She said she just felt like she needed to tell me because she would have felt worse keeping it to herself. I asked what too close meant. She said just close. That it was a concert, people dance. She wasn't thinking clearly. I asked if anything else happened. She said no, directly, looked at me and said no. I believed her. I don't know if I actually believed her or if I chose to believe her because the alternative required a version of that night I didn't want to sit with at 2 in the morning. I said okay. I said I appreciated her telling me. I said, let's go to sleep. She showered first. That was normal. She always showered when she came home from a night out. I lay in the dark and told myself it was nothing, that honesty was good, that the fact she told me meant something. The feeling in my chest didn't agree, but I let it go, or I thought I did. The next few days were regular. She was a little quieter than usual. I was a little more attentive than usual. Neither of us mentioned the conversation. We moved around each other like it hadn't happened, which I think was both of our ways of deciding it was handled. It wasn't handled, I know that now, but at the time, I needed it to be. There was one moment that week that I keep coming back to. Wednesday. We were in the kitchen. She was making coffee, I was getting my bag ready for work, and her phone buzzed on the counter. She picked it up faster than she normally would have. Not dramatically, just quick. She looked at it, set it face down, went back to the coffee. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. And I told myself that meant nothing. The name I hadn't gotten, she hadn't given it. The guy from the concert was just a guy, a friend of a friend. No name, no face in my head, which meant I couldn't look him up, couldn't form a complete picture, which maybe was the point, or maybe I'm being unfair. I'm not sure anymore. What I do know is that by the end of that week, the feeling had settled into something I stopped acknowledging. Not gone, just relocated. The way you move furniture when you don't want to deal with a stain on the floor. Still there. Just covered. October was where it started to become visible. Not in any one thing, in accumulation. Kayla's phone became something I was aware of. Not obsessively. I wasn't going through it. I wasn't standing over her shoulder. But I noticed when she angled it away. I noticed when she laughed at something and didn't share it. Small things. Things I would have ignored before September. She started going out more. Not a dramatic increase. One extra night per week, maybe. But I noticed. I didn't say anything. I was afraid of sounding like the jealous husband who couldn't handle his wife having friends. And I wasn't that, or I didn't want to be that. So I stayed quiet. I was supportive. I asked how her nights went, and she'd give me a summary and I'd listen and we'd move on. It started to feel like an arrangement. Priya was her closest friend. I'd met her dozens of times. She was loud and direct, and I genuinely liked her. At some point I realized I was paying attention to whether Priya's name came up in these outings. It usually did, which I found reassuring. I'm not proud of that I was doing a mental head count of who my wife was spending time with. But I was. There was a Saturday in mid-October when I overheard part of a phone call. Kayla was in the bedroom, door mostly closed. I wasn't trying to listen. I was walking past to get something from the bathroom. I heard her laugh. Then stop, I told you. Yes, I know, stop. Playful, that kind of playful that has a specific texture to it. I kept walking. I got what I needed from the bathroom. I went back to the living room and sat down and stared at the television for a while without turning it on. She came out 20 minutes later, normal, relaxed, and asked if I wanted to order food. I said sure. We ordered Thai. She was warm that night, attentive. She sat close on the couch and leaned against me, and it felt like the beginning, like the version of us I had before the calendar got complicated. I thought maybe I was wrong. I thought maybe I was building things in my head. I wanted to be wrong. I think that's important to say. I wasn't looking for a reason to end things. I wasn't already halfway out. I was a man who loved his wife and was desperately hoping the math wasn't adding up the way I thought it was. There was a gift I had given Kayla 8 months earlier, a camera, a proper one, not a phone, a real mirrorless camera, because she'd mentioned once that she wanted to take photography more seriously, and I had taken that seriously because I took her seriously. It wasn't cheap. It was the kind of gift that took research and thought and more than I should probably have spent. She loved it. She used it for about 6 weeks, took it to a few events, put it on her Instagram, and then gradually it migrated to the shelf in the bedroom. I didn't say anything about that either. I mentioned the camera because it comes back. Not yet, but it comes back. Around the end of October, something changed in her behavior that I noticed but couldn't name. She was present, physically. But she started looking at me in this particular way during conversations. Not unkindly. Just like she was watching me from a certain distance. Like she was assessing something. I thought maybe she was unhappy. I thought maybe she wanted something from me I wasn't giving her. I tried to be more present. I cooked dinner more often. I suggested we go somewhere on the weekend. She was receptive but not enthusiastic, which felt like its own answer to a question I hadn't quite asked. One night I asked her directly, "Are you okay?" She said yes. I said, "Are we okay?" She paused before she said yes to that one. That pause lasted maybe 2 seconds. It felt much longer. She smiled after it. She said, of course, she was just tired. Work was a lot. I nodded. I said, okay, I didn't push. Looking back, I should have pushed. Not aggressively, just honestly. I should have said, I need you to help me understand what's happening, because I feel like something's happening and I can't see it clearly. But I didn't. I don't know exactly why. Partly because I didn't want to sound accusatory. Partly because some version of me already knew, and knowing for certain would have required me to do something about it. And I wasn't ready for that yet. I don't know. If you're following along with this one, stay with it. It gets clearer and quieter. Maybe hit whatever button keeps us going. Okay, back to it. The name came up in early November. Not in a way she announced. It slipped out. We were talking about a bar she'd been to with friends. I asked who was there. She listed names: Priya, Jade, Marcus, and then briefly, quickly, almost clipped, and Eli. She moved on before the sentence was fully finished. I caught it. I didn't show that I caught it. Eli. Now I had a name. I didn't do anything with it right away. I held it, turned it over, told myself it was just a name, that Kayla had a life that included people I didn't know, that this wasn't evidence of anything. But I knew. Somewhere in the part of me that had been carefully ignoring things since September, I knew. Eli was the friend of a friend from the concert. I didn't ask her. I couldn't figure out how to ask without revealing how much I'd been paying attention. So I waited, which was a mistake. But I was still hoping. The video appeared on a Thursday. November. Late. Someone from Kayla's group had been making content that night. Short clips, the kind that get posted without much thought. And in the background of one of those clips, clearly visible, was Kayla, walking out of the venue, not alone. The guy beside her had his hand on the small of her back. They were walking close enough that their shoulders overlapped. She was laughing at something. He leaned down when he said it. The way you lean down when it's just for one person. The post had tagged her, or tagged someone near her. I found it because a mutual acquaintance had shared it, and it appeared in my feed the way things do when the world has decided you need to see something. I watched it 3 times. I set my phone face down on the table. I sat with it for a while. This was the night of September 14th, the concert. The one where she came home and told me she'd danced too close and nothing else happened. The one where I said okay and we went to sleep. She had left with him. Not just danced. Left with him. I don't know what happened after they left. I can say that honestly. The video ended there, and whatever came next wasn't something I had footage of. But I knew what it looked like. I knew what I felt when I watched it. And I knew that the version of that night she had given me was a version with something removed. I didn't call her. She was at work. I got through my morning. I took my calls. I moved things from one place to another on my screen. I ate lunch at my desk without tasting it. She came home at 6:45, normal routine. Bag on the hook, shoes at the door, called my name to let me know she was back. I was sitting at the kitchen table. No food, no TV, just sitting. She came around the corner and saw me and slowed down. Hey, she said. What's wrong? Come sit down, I said. She did. She sat across from me. She already looked like she knew. That calculation I'd seen before in the bedroom doorway, it was back. I turned my phone around and played the clip. I didn't say anything while it played. When it finished, I set the phone down. She looked at the table. That looks bad, she said. What happened after this, I said. She was quiet. Kayla, what happened after this video ends? We walked around for a bit, she said. Talked. I came home. He had his hand on your back. Dylan, were you still drunk at that point? She looked up. Nothing happened, she said. Her voice cracked on the second word. I watched her. I swear to you, she said. We walked. We talked. I came home. Were you still in contact with him after that? Not a question. She heard it as one. She didn't answer immediately. Occasionally, she said. The word landed like something heavy placed carefully on a surface. Since September, I said. It's not what you're making it into. I haven't made it into anything yet, I said. I've asked you 2 questions. She was crying now. Not dramatically. Quiet, controlled. The kind of crying that happens when someone is trying not to cry and losing. She pressed her fingers to her eyes. I didn't cheat on you, she said. I need you to hear that. I hear it, I said. But, she said, but you've been talking to him for 2 months and didn't mention it. You told me nothing happened at the concert and left out the part where you left with him. That's not cheating. That's something else. And I don't know that the difference matters as much as you want it to. She didn't have an answer for that. I hadn't expected one. Why him, I said. She looked at me. He paid attention to me, she said. The way you used to. I sat with that. It was probably the most honest thing she'd said in 2 months. maybe longer, and the thing is, I understood it. I didn't like it, I wasn't going to give her a pass on it, but I understood what it meant. I had gone somewhere, not physically, but I had gotten quieter over time, more internal, less available, and she had filled that space. Not without fault, but not from nowhere. I need some time to think, I said. Okay, she said. What does that mean? It means tonight I need you not to be here. She stayed at Priya's. I sat in the apartment and didn't watch anything or eat anything. I just sat. The next few days were strange. She came back. We talked more. Not in circles. She was clear, I was clear. She maintained that nothing physical had happened. I didn't call her a liar, but I didn't give her certainty either. She said she was sorry. I believed that she was sorry. I also believed that the sorry was for getting caught, at least in part. Not entirely, but in part. We slept in the same bed and didn't touch. By the end of the week, I had made up my mind. Not in anger, not with a speech, I just knew. I don't think I can come back from this, I said. Not because of what you did or didn't do, but because of what I've felt for the last 2 months, and because you let me feel it. You watched me pay attention and wonder and doubt myself, and you knew more than I did, and you let it go on. She didn't argue. That also told me something. We agreed to separate. The camera. I mentioned it would come back. When the conversation turned to practicalities, who was taking what needed to be handled, I brought it up. She assumed it was hers. I'd given it to her. I understood why she assumed that. But I had purchased it on a credit card that offered buyer's protection, and I had the purchase documentation. I walked her through what that meant. I wasn't aggressive about it. I just made it clear. The camera came with me. She was surprised. Maybe she was expecting the breakup version of Dylan to be too deflated to do the math. She didn't know me as well as she thought. I packed it in its original bag and put it in my car. It wasn't about money. It was about refusing to leave behind the version of myself that took her seriously enough to make that kind of gesture. Taking the camera back wasn't revenge. It was documentation. I exist. I made real choices. You don't get to keep the evidence of that. 3 months passed. I moved into a smaller place on the other side of the city, less convenient, quieter. I didn't hear from Kayla often. When I did, it was practical. Paperwork, shared accounts, the small administrative weight of dismantling a life together. She was professional about it, polite. The kind of polite that felt like a closed door, and I realized I had probably made her feel that way many times without knowing it. I thought about that. I was trying to be honest with myself during those months. Genuinely honest, not the kind of honesty that excuses your behavior by cataloging theirs. I had gotten quieter. I had stopped showing up. I had made Kayla's world smaller by withdrawing from it, and then I had stayed home while she rebuilt something in the parts I'd vacated. That wasn't an excuse for what she did. But it was a thing I had done. I had to carry both of those things. I found out through Priya, who had been carefully fruitful through all of it, which I respected, that Kayla and Eli had started officially seeing each other about 6 weeks after the separation. I don't know what I expected. I think I expected to feel something dramatic, rage, collapse, something cinematic. Instead, I felt tired. And underneath the tired, something that took me a while to identify as relief. Because it confirmed the version of events I had chosen to act on. It confirmed that my read of the situation had not been paranoia. I was right. I hadn't wanted to be, but I was. Kayla, from what I understood, had started to reframe the story, not in a dramatic way. In the quiet way people do when the truth has edges they don't want to keep touching. She told people that we had grown apart, that she had felt invisible in the marriage, that she had found someone who actually saw her. All of that was technically true. What it left out was the 2 months of careful omission, the choice to let me stay confused. The story about the concert with the piece removed. People who only heard her version thought of her as someone who had finally left a situation that wasn't working. People who only heard mine thought of her as someone who had quietly cheated in increments. The truth was somewhere in the uncomfortable middle, the way it usually is. I know that. I don't feel the need to correct her version with everyone who hears it. People are going to believe what they're handed when you hand it to them well. Kayla had always been good at that. There was a moment in month 2 of the separation that I keep thinking about. I was unboxing things in the new apartment, just organizing. I found a photo, one of those printed ones, from before we both stopped printing photos, from a trip we took in year 1. We were standing somewhere I can't fully place now, laughing. She was slightly blurry because she'd moved right as it was taken. I stood there looking at it for a long time. Not sad exactly. Or not only sad, there was something else in it. The feeling of looking at a version of yourself you can't go back to, not because time moved, but because knowledge moved. You know things now you didn't know then, and the knowing changes the shape of the memory. The laughing was real, the trip was real. None of that was retroactively false. And yet, I put the photo in a box I wasn't sure I'd ever open again. I went back to something Kayla had said the night of the confrontation. He paid attention to me, the way you used to. I'd been living with that line. Because here's the honest version of that. I had stopped. Not intentionally, not cruelly, but in the way that happens when a relationship becomes an assumption rather than a choice. I had stopped choosing her and started assuming her, and she had gone looking for being chosen. I'm not saying it was my fault. That's not what this is. But I've had to think about what I want to be different next time. If there's a next time. Not the version of me that gets so quiet I disappear. Not the version that confuses consistency with presence. There's a difference between being reliable and being engaged. I had been very reliable. I had not always been engaged. That's something I'm sitting with. The camera sat on my shelf in the new apartment. I hadn't used it, hadn't tried to. It was a mirrorless camera designed for someone with more patience and artistry than I'd ever had for it. I'd bought it for her and then I'd taken it back. I told myself it was principle. I think it was also grief in a shape I could control. There's nothing wrong with that. Grief doesn't always look like sadness. Sometimes it looks like making sure you have the documentation for a camera purchase. Sometimes it looks like the one practical thing you did when everything else felt like it was dissolving. I'm not embarrassed by it. Much. Part 5. Quiet ending. We saw each other once more, 6 months after the separation. It wasn't planned or not planned in the way you plan things. She'd reached out asking if I still had a specific document she needed, something we'd filed jointly. I said I'd look. She asked if she could just come by and pick it up rather than doing it by mail. I said sure. She came on a Saturday afternoon. I buzzed her up. She looked the same and different, the same face, but something in her posture had shifted. More settled, maybe, or more certain. I couldn't tell if it was peace or resolution or just someone who had moved on. She came inside briefly. I gave her the document. She looked around the apartment without commenting on it. It's nice, she said eventually. It works, I said. We stood in the small entryway. Neither of us sat down. How are you doing? She asked. And the way she asked it was genuine, not performative, not guilty, just honest curiosity. Better, I said, slowly. She nodded. Me too, she said. I know that probably. She stopped, adjusted. I just wanted to say I know what I did, how I handled it, and I'm sorry. Not the version I said when I was scared of what you were going to do. The actual version. I looked at her. I know, I said. I meant it. Not that it changed anything. Not that it undid the 2 months I'm feeling something I couldn't name while she knew exactly what it was. But I could tell the difference between a scripted apology and a real one. She was giving me a real one. Thank you for that, I said. She almost smiled. It wasn't quite a smile. More like the expression before one. Okay, she said. I'll let you get on with your day. Take care of yourself, I said. You too, Dylan. She left. I closed the door. Stood in the entryway for a minute longer than I needed to. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel healed. I felt something closer to finished. Like a chapter that had been running long past its natural end had finally reached its last sentence. I went back to whatever I'd been doing before she arrived. I think I was making coffee. That detail feels important for some reason. That the moment after was ordinary. Coffee, a quiet apartment, afternoon light through the window. Life after a thing doesn't always arrive in a dramatic form. Sometimes it's just. The document got picked up, the door closed, the coffee finished brewing. And that's enough. It has to be. I thought about her less and less as the months went on. Not because I trained myself not to. Just because time moves in that direction when you let it. Eli, from what I heard, was still around. I didn't feel anything particular about that. I might be remembering this wrong, the precise feelings, the exact order of things. Memory flattens. It rearranges itself to make sense of the present, rather than faithfully reporting the past. But this is the version that feels true to me. The version where I was a man who loved someone, who got quieter when I should have spoken up, who let a 2-second pause be the only warning I got, and who chose to walk away not in anger, but in the clear-eyed recognition that something had already ended before I'd been told it had. There's no villain in this version. There's no hero either. There's just two people who wanted different things and handled the gap between them poorly. And a camera on a shelf. And coffee. And the kind of morning that asks nothing of you. That's where it ends. Not with resolution, exactly. but with something close enough.